The innocent mistake. The Galactic Coalition headquarters floated in the neutral zone between 5 star systems. It was a massive structure built over 3 centuries by the combined efforts of 47 species. Inside its gleaming halls, representatives from across the galaxy gathered to discuss trade, resolve disputes, and maintain peace among the stars. Captain Sarah Chun walked through the crowded corridors with her son Tommy beside her. The 8-year-old boy had bright eyes that reflected wonder at everything around him. His small hand gripped his mother's tightly as they passed beings of every imaginable shape and size. Some had multiple limbs. Others glowed with bioluminescence. A few floated instead of walking. Sarah was a military attaché assigned to the Coalition for a 6-month rotation. Earth had been a member of the Coalition for 200 years, but humanity was still considered young compared to species that had traveled the stars for tens of thousands of years. The older races tolerated humans, but rarely took them seriously. Earth's military was small. Its territory consisted of only 12 systems. In the grand scheme of galactic politics, humanity barely registered as a footnote. But Sarah did not care about politics today. She cared that Tommy was happy. The boy had begged to come on this assignment. He wanted to see aliens and spaceships in distant worlds. Sarah had finally agreed, thinking it would be educational. She wanted him to see how vast and diverse the universe truly was. They reached the diplomatic quarters where Sarah had meetings scheduled. The accommodations were comfortable but modest. Tommy immediately ran to the large viewport and pressed his nose against the glass. "Mom, look at all the ships," he said with excitement. "There must be thousands of them." Sarah smiled and joined him at the window. Together they watched the endless stream of vessels arriving and departing from the station. Cargo haulers, personal transports, military cruisers, and exploration vessels all moved in carefully controlled patterns. "Can I explore while you're in meetings?" Tommy asked, turning to his mother with hopeful eyes. Sarah hesitated. The station was generally safe, and Tommy was responsible for his age. He had his emergency communicator. The Coalition had strict laws about harming children of any species. "Stay in the public areas," she said finally. "Do not go anywhere marked restricted. Keep your communicator on, and check in with me every hour." Tommy nodded eagerly and hugged her. "I promise, Mom." "Thank you." The next morning, Sarah attended her first meeting, while Tommy set out to explore. The boy wandered through markets selling goods from hundreds of worlds. He watched performers who could manipulate light with their minds. He tried foods with flavors he had never imagined. Everyone he met was friendly. Some aliens found him just as fascinating as he found them. By the second day, Tommy had grown confident. He knew the main corridors well. But he wanted to see something special, something his friends back on Earth would never believe. He found a corridor he had not noticed before. The walls were covered with beautiful crystals that pulsed with soft blue light. Music seemed to come from the crystals themselves, a haunting melody that called to something deep inside him. Tommy followed the corridor without thinking. The music drew him forward. The corridor opened into a vast chamber. Tommy gasped. Floating in the center of the room was a massive crystalline structure that rotated slowly in the air. Patterns of light moved across its surface, like living things. The music was louder here, more beautiful, more compelling. Tommy did not see the warning signs written in Krillian script. He did not understand that this was a sacred resonance chamber, the most holy site of the Krillian people. He saw only beauty and wonder. He stepped into the chamber and walked toward the floating crystal. He wanted to touch it. He wanted to understand it. He reached out his hand. The music stopped. "What are you doing here?" The voice was cold and filled with fury. Tommy spun around and saw 3 tall figures standing at the entrance. They were Krillians, a species of crystalline beings that stood nearly 3 meters tall. Their bodies were composed of faceted stone that glowed from within. Their faces were angular and alien, but Tommy could read the anger in their posture. "I am sorry," Tommy said quickly. His voice trembled. "I heard the music. I just wanted to see. I will leave right now." The tallest Krillian stepped forward. His crystalline body glowed with orange light, a sign of extreme anger in his species. "You have violated the sacred resonance. No outsider may enter this chamber. Your presence has contaminated our most holy site. I did not know, Tommy said. Tears formed in his eyes. Please, I did not mean any harm. I am really sorry. He tried to walk toward the exit, but two Krillian guards materialized from the walls themselves. They blocked his path with crossed arms that looked like living stone. Please, Tommy whispered. I want my mom. The elder Krillian raised his hand. Light gathered around his palm. Ignorance is not innocence. Violation is violation. The law is clear. I am just a kid, Tommy said. His voice broke. I made a mistake. Please. But the Krillian elder did not care about mistakes or mercy. His entire existence was built around sacred laws that had existed for 50,000 years. Those laws did not bend for children who wandered where they should not. Sarah was in the middle of negotiating a shipping contract when her communicator screamed. The sound made her blood turn to ice. It was the emergency signal, the one that meant her child was in danger. She ran faster than she had ever run. She pushed through crowds and knocked people aside. She followed the tracking signal through corridor after corridor. She screamed Tommy's name until her throat burned. Security guards tried to stop her at the entrance to the Krillian sector. She showed them her credentials and demanded to see her son. They looked at each other with expressions she could not read. Finally, they let her through. The High Elder of the Krillian delegation met her in a formal receiving chamber. His crystalline body glowed with purple light, the color of official judgment in his culture. Captain Chun, he said with a voice like grinding stone, I regret to inform you that your offspring violated the sacred resonance chamber. This is a crime punishable by immediate purification under Krillian law. Sarah felt the world tilt beneath her feet. Where's my son? Where's Tommy? The sentence has already been carried out. The High Elder said without emotion. The child has been purified. His physical form has been dissolved and returned to base elements. The contamination has been cleansed. The words did not make sense. Sarah's mind refused to process them. No, she whispered. No, he is 8 years old. He is a child. He made a mistake. Mistakes have consequences, the High Elder replied. Your species should teach its young to respect the sacred sites of others. Sarah lunged at him. Guards caught her before she could reach the elder. She screamed and fought and begged him to tell her this was not real. But it was real. Tommy was gone. Her son, her baby, the boy who had been so excited to see the stars, had been murdered for walking into the wrong room. The Coalition Council met 4 days later. Sarah stood before the assembled representatives with red eyes and a voice made hollow by grief. She demanded justice. She demanded that the Krillians be held accountable for killing her child. The Krillian High Elder explained his people's sacred laws. He stated that the child had committed a serious violation. He expressed regret that the situation had occurred, but maintained that the response was both legal and necessary under Krillian religious doctrine. The council voted. 32 species voted in favor of the Krillian position. 8 voted with humanity. 5 abstained. The decision was final. The incident was declared regrettable but lawful under the principle of cultural sovereignty. The Krillians were within their rights to enforce their sacred laws on their designated territory. The Coalition offered humanity a formal apology for the unfortunate misunderstanding. They advised Earth to provide better education to human children about respecting alien customs and restricted areas. Sarah listened to the verdict in silence. Her face showed nothing. When the council dismissed the case, she stood and walked out without speaking a single word. That night, she sent a message to Earth. She attached the security recording from outside the sacred resonance chamber. The audio had captured Tommy's voice, small and frightened, apologizing over and over as the Krillians carried out their sentence. Sarah added only 7 words to the message. They killed my son and called it justice. The message traveled across space and reached Earth Command. Within an hour, it had been forwarded to every human colony, every military installation, every government office, and every private household in human space. Earth went silent. No protests were filed. No angry declarations were issued. No demands for war were made. Just silence. The Coalition noticed, but did not worry. What could humanity do? They were a minor species with a small fleet. They would grieve, perhaps withdraw from some committees, and eventually accept that this was how the galaxy worked. Older species made the rules. Younger species learned to follow them. But something strange began happening across human space. Within 72 hours of Sarah's message, every human living outside the Sol system began leaving. On trade stations, human merchants closed their businesses without explanation. They sold their inventory at huge losses and booked passage home. On research outposts, human scientists abandoned decades of work and transferred their data to alien colleagues before departing without explanation. On the Coalition headquarters itself, the entire human diplomatic mission packed up and left within 2 days. Sarah was the last to go. She stood at the departure gate and looked back at the massive station one final time. Her face was carved from stone. Then she turned and walked onto her transport. Within one standard month, there was not a single human being left outside the Sol system. It was as if humanity had simply vanished from the galaxy. The Coalition found this behavior puzzling. Some representatives assumed humans were ashamed of their child's actions. Others thought they were sulking like youngsters who had been rightfully disciplined. The Krillian High Elder stated that humanity was learning a valuable lesson about respecting their betters. But Admiral Vex of the Tellurian Dominion was not so certain. He was ancient even by the standards of elder species. He had commanded fleets for 3,000 years and had seen empires rise and fall. Something about humanity's withdrawal troubled him deeply. He went to the Coalition's central archives and began searching through historical records. He looked for information about humanity's early space exploration, their first contact, their integration into the Coalition. What he found made his heart stop beating. Most of the files were corrupted. Massive sections had been deleted or scrambled beyond recovery, but fragments remained. References to something called the Architect Fleet, mentions of a period known as the Great Silence, and one phrase that appeared in multiple damage files, the builders who chose to sleep. Vex dug deeper. He found a partial record from 20,000 years ago. It described a species that had controlled half the known galaxy, a species whose technology made current Coalition science look primitive, a species that had suddenly, inexplicably withdrawn to a single star system and severed all contact with the rest of the galaxy. The record did not name this species, but it identified their home system by its stellar classification. Vex checked the classification against current star charts. It matched the Sol system, Earth system. Vex immediately called for an emergency session of the Coalition Security Council. But before the meeting could be convened, reports began flooding in from across the galaxy. Ships were detecting strange energy signatures in deep space. Ancient warning buoys that had been dormant for millennia were suddenly activating, and something massive was moving in the empty spaces between stars. On Earth's moon, seismic sensors detected movement beneath the surface. Something vast was stirring in chambers that had been sealed for 20,000 years. On Mars, entire mountain ranges began to shift as hidden structures awakened. In the asteroid belt, rocks that had floated unchanged for eons suddenly moved aside, revealing massive gates that led to somewhere else. The Coalition sent a scout ship to observe. The vessel entered the Sol system and began transmitting sensor data. Earth looked normal. No fleet was visible. The scout captain reported that humans appeared to be hiding on their planet. Then the transmission changed. "Wait," the captain said. "We are detecting something. Multiple contacts. Very large contacts. They are coming from... I do not understand. They are coming from everywhere. From spaces that should be empty. From dimensions we did not know existed." There was a long pause. When the captain spoke again, his voice shook. "Council, these ships do not match anything in our databases. The designs are completely unknown. And the size, the smallest one is larger than our biggest dreadnought. Some of them are the size of moons. And they just keep coming. Hundreds of them. Thousands of them." Another pause. Longer this time. "They are looking at us. Scanning us. Studying us. We are trying to establish communication, but receiving no response. It is like they're deciding what we are worth." The final transmission from the scout ship came 30 seconds later. The captain's voice was barely a whisper. There is something else. Something in the dark beyond Neptune. Something so large our sensors cannot measure it. It was sleeping, and we woke it up. The transmission ended. The scout ship was never heard from again. Panic erupted across the coalition. Emergency sessions were called. Military fleets were mobilized. Scientists desperately searched the archives for any information about humanity's true history. And in the Sol system, in the darkness beyond the outer planets, in chambers beneath the Moon and Mars, in hidden dimensions folded into empty space, ancient machines continued to wake. Ships that had not moved in 20,000 years broke free from their hiding places. Crews that had slept since before the coalition existed opened their eyes. Power systems older than most civilizations hummed to life. And in the command center of the largest vessel, a vessel so massive it could have swallowed the coalition headquarters whole, a woman drew her first breath in 15 millennia. Her name was Victoria Cross. Long ago, they had called her the architect of silence. She had commanded the greatest fleet humanity had ever built. She had won wars that reshaped the galaxy. And she had been the one who decided that humanity needed to sleep, to forget, to become something better than the monsters they had been. But she had also left instructions for when they should wake. Clear, specific instructions about the circumstances that would require a return of the ancient fleet. An officer approached her with a data tablet. On it was a recording, a small boy's voice, frightened and confused and apologetic. I am sorry. I did not mean any harm. Please, I want my mom. Admiral Cross listened to the recording once. Her face remained expressionless, but something shifted behind her eyes. Something cold and ancient and absolutely merciless. What happened? She asked. They told her. They told her about the Galactic Coalition. They told her about the Krillians and their sacred laws. They told her about an 8-year-old boy named Tommy Chun who had walked into the wrong room and been murdered for his innocent curiosity. Admiral Cross was silent for a long time. Then she stood and walked to the viewport. Outside, she could see the assembled fleet. 50,000 warships, each one capable of destroying planets, all waiting for her command. Wake everyone, she said quietly. Every ship, every crew, every soldier we put to sleep, all of them. An officer hesitated. Admiral, the Coalition has millions of ships. They have been building their military for thousands of years while we slept. Cross smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. I know, she said. Plot a course for the Coalition headquarters. Maximum speed. It is time the galaxy remembered who we are. It is time they learn what happens when you harm a human child. She turned from a viewport and looked at her assembled command staff. They had all been sleeping for millennia, waiting for the day they might be needed. That day had come. Send a message ahead of us, Cross ordered. Make sure every species in the Coalition receives it. Tell them the Silent Guardians are awake. Tell them we are coming. And tell them that judgment will be rendered. The officer nodded and moved to carry out the order. As he left, Cross looked down at the tablet again. Tommy's face smiled up at her from the screen, a picture from before he had died. He looked so young, so innocent, so full of wonder about the universe. I am sorry we were not there to protect you, she whispered. But we are awake now, and they will never hurt another child again. This I promise you. Outside, the ancient fleet began to move. 50,000 ships, each one a masterpiece of technology that the current galaxy could not comprehend, all moving in perfect formation toward the heart of Coalition space. The sleeping giants had awakened, and they remembered everything. The awakening of the Silent Guardians. The emergency session of the Galactic Coalition Security Council was the largest gathering in 500 years. Representatives from every member species crowded into the grand chamber. Fear hung in the air like a physical presence. No one spoke above a whisper. Everyone watched the massive display screens showing sensor data from across the galaxy. Admiral Vex stood at the central podium with his data crystal in hand. His scaled skin had turned pale gray, a sign of extreme distress in his species. He had spent 3 days without sleep researching what he had discovered. Now he had to tell the council something they would not want to believe. "I will share what I have learned," Vex began. His voice was steady despite his fear. "You will not want to accept it, but you must listen. Our survival may depend on understanding the truth." He activated his data crystal. Ancient images appeared in the air above the council. Ships with designs that hurt to look at. Cities burning on 100 worlds. Entire star systems going dark. And everywhere, the same symbol. A blue circle with stars arranged in a spiral pattern. 20,000 years ago, Vex said, there was a species that controlled half of this galaxy. They did not negotiate. They did not seek peace. They expanded system by system, world by world. No one could stand against them. Their technology was so advanced that our greatest weapons today would seem like primitive tools to them. The images shifted. More destruction. More conquered worlds. A map showing half the galaxy painted in red. They called themselves the architects, Vex continued. They built wonders and nightmares in equal measure. For 5,000 years they expanded. For 5,000 years, everyone else ran or died or submitted. They were unstoppable. A representative from the Eltharian collective raised a tentacle. What happened to them? Why have we never heard of these architects? Vex paused. This was the part that terrified him most. Something changed them. Our records do not explain what. Perhaps they encountered something in the deep void that showed them the horror of what they had become. Perhaps they simply grew tired of blood. But 15,000 years ago, they stopped. They pulled back to their home system. They dismantled their empire. They released the species they had conquered. And then they did something unprecedented. They chose to forget. Forget! The Krillian High Elder leaned forward. His crystalline body glowed with skeptical purple light. A species cannot simply forget what was. They can if they try hard enough, Vex replied. The architects sealed their memories away. They sank their greatest ships into hidden places. They put their warriors into suspended animation. They erased their own history. And then they started over as if none of it had ever happened. They rebuilt themselves as a peaceful species, a young species, a species that would be welcomed into the community of worlds rather than feared. The chamber erupted in noise. Representatives shouted questions and denials. Security personnel moved to restore order. But one voice cut through the chaos. "You are talking about humans." It was not a question. The speaker was Ambassador Threll of the Mindorian Federation. She was ancient and wise, and her species was known for understanding patterns others missed. "You're saying that humans are the architects." Vex nodded slowly. "The star system matches. The timeline matches. And there are other clues scattered through corrupted files. References to a species that chose to sleep rather than rule. A species that wanted to be better than what they had been. The humans we have known for 200 years are not a young species learning to walk among the stars. They are the ancient monsters from our oldest nightmares. And we just reminded them who they used to be." The Krillian High Elder rose to his full height. "This is impossible. Humans are weak. Their fleet consists of 300 ships at most. We have millions. Even if they once had power, they gave it up. They chose to be weak." "Their visible fleet has 300 ships," Vex corrected. "But the ships they hid before they went to sleep, the ships that have been waiting in the darkness for 15,000 years, our estimates suggest there are at least 50,000 of them, perhaps more. And their technology—" He paused. "Their technology was so advanced 20,000 years ago that we still cannot match it today. Before they slept, they improved everything. They made their fleet ready for the day they might need to wake." He activated another file. The final transmission from a scout ship played for the entire council. The captain's terrified voice filled the chamber. Something so large our sensors cannot measure it. It was sleeping, and we woke it up. "The scout ship is gone," Vex said quietly. 50 crew members, the best sensors in our fleet, gone without a trace. And that was just the beginning. As if responding to his words, an aide rushed into the chamber with urgent news. The human fleet had been detected. Ships were appearing across the galaxy, emerging from points in space that should have been empty. They were coming from the dark spaces between stars. They were materializing from dimensions that current science said did not exist. They were rising from hidden bases on dead moons and inside hollowed asteroids. The numbers kept climbing. 1,000 ships detected. 5,000. 10,000. 20,000. They were converging from every direction, forming a wall of metal and ancient power that moved inexorably toward coalition space. "How is this possible?" demanded the Otharian representative. "How could they hide an entire fleet across the galaxy without anyone noticing?" "Because they built this galaxy," Vex said simply. "When they ruled, they left pieces of themselves everywhere. Hidden bases, sleeping ships, automated factories waiting for the signal to wake. They did not just withdraw. They positioned themselves to return if they were ever needed, and we gave them a reason." The Krillian High Elder tried to maintain his composure. "We must prepare our defenses. Gather all fleets at Coalition Central. We have faced threats before. We will face this one." But Vex was looking at something else. Another message had just arrived. His face went even paler. "It is too late for that," he said quietly. "They are already here." The chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives screamed. Guards raised weapons. And through the massive viewports of the council chamber, they saw them. Human ships. Dozens of them. Hundreds of them. Surrounding Coalition Central Station in a perfect sphere. They had arrived without warning, without detection, as if they had simply stepped through reality itself. And in the center of the formation was the largest ship anyone had ever seen. It was black and silver and shaped like a blade designed by gods. It drank in the light around it. Its design was beautiful and terrible in equal measure. Looking at it made something primal inside every species' brain scream in recognition of an apex predator. A transmission cut through all frequencies. Every screen in Coalition space suddenly showed the same image. A woman in black armor, standing on a command deck. Her face was human, but her eyes were ancient beyond measure. "I am Admiral Victoria Cross of the Silent Guardians," she said. Her voice was calm and cold. "I am addressing the Galactic Coalition and all its member species." The chaos in the council chamber slowly died. Everyone listened. 15,000 years ago, Cross continued, "my people chose to become something better. We put away our weapons. We sealed our memories. We tried to be peaceful. We tried to be kind. We joined your coalition. We followed your laws. We trusted you to protect us while we slept." She paused. The silence was absolute. "You were supposed to protect us. Instead, you murdered our children. You killed an 8-year-old boy named Tommy Chin whose only crime was curiosity. You called it justice. You called it lawful. You voted to support his killers." Cross leaned forward slightly. "We remember everything now. We remember what we were. We remember what we can do. And we have decided that the galaxy needs to be reminded as well." The transmission ended. For a long moment, no one in the council chamber moved. Then the Krillian High Elder stepped forward. For the first time, his crystalline body showed cracks of fear. "What do we do?" he asked. The question was directed at no one in particular. Vex looked out the viewport at the ancient ships surrounding the station. He thought about everything he had learned. The wars, the destruction, the 5,000 years of terror that had ended when the architects chose to sleep. And he thought about what it must have taken to wake them again. "We pray," he said finally. "We pray that they are still capable of mercy. Because if they are not, nothing in this galaxy can stop them." Outside Coalition Central, the Silent Guardian fleet waited in perfect formation. Patient, silent, watching. Inside the flagship, Admiral Cross looked at a holographic image of Tommy Chun. The boy's school photo showed him smiling with missing front teeth and messy hair. "I am sorry we were not there to protect you," she whispered. "But we are awake now." She turned to her command staff. "Set course for the Krillian home system. Maximum speed." An officer hesitated. "Admiral, they have mobilized their entire fleet. 4,000 ships defending their home world. If we attack, many will die." Cross's expression did not change. "Yes, they will. Engage." The Silent Guardian fleet began to move. The Krillians refused to surrender. They were one of the founding species of the Coalition. They had existed for 100,000 years. They had survived wars and plagues and cosmic disasters. They would not bow to a species they had considered inferior. When news came that the human fleet was approaching their home system, they did not evacuate. Instead, they gathered every warship they possessed. Allies sent reinforcements. In total, 4,000 vessels assembled around Krillian Prime in the largest offensive formation in recorded history. The ships formed a perfect sphere around the planet. Layer after layer of shields and weapons and metal. On the command deck of the flagship, the Krillian High Elder looked at the assembled armada and allowed himself confidence. "Let them come," he said to his officers. "Let them see what happens when they challenge those who have mastered the stars for 100 millennia. We were ancient when their ancestors were primitives. They think a few old ships can frighten us. They will learn." The Silent Guardian fleet arrived 3 days later. They did not come from one direction. They appeared from everywhere at once. Ships materialized from points in space surrounding the entire Krillian defensive sphere. It was as if they had known exactly where every defender would be positioned. The sensors on the Krillian flagship began counting. 1,000 human ships. 3,000. 5,000. 8,000. The number climbed until officers stopped reporting it. It was too demoralizing. But numbers were not what made the High Elder's confidence crumble. It was the size. The smallest human vessel was twice as large as the biggest Krillian dreadnought. The medium ships were the size of moons. And the flagship sitting at the center of the formation like a dark god was larger than anything the Krillians had imagined possible. Admiral Cross's voice echoed across all frequencies. "You have one chance. Power down your weapons. Lower your shields. Accept judgment for what you've done." The High Elder grabbed the communications console. His crystalline hands cracked with the force of his grip. "We are the Krillians. We do not surrender to species we have witnessed crawl from primitive systems. You were nothing when we were already ancient. You will be nothing again." There was a pause. Then Cross responded. Her voice was still calm. "Very well." The battle began. The Krillians fired first. 4,000 ships unleashed everything they possessed. Plasma cannons, fusion missiles, graviton bombs, energy beams that could slice through mountains. The combined firepower was enough to shatter planets. The attacks reached the human fleet and stopped. They did not hit shields. They did not bounce off armor. They simply ceased to exist. The weapons entered a space around the human ships and vanished, as if reality itself had rejected them. Then the Silent Guardians responded. They did not fire conventional weapons. Instead, space itself began to change. Reality twisted around the Krillian fleet. The laws of physics became suggestions rather than rules. On one ship, time reversed. The crew watched helplessly as they lived their last moments backward again and again in an endless loop. On another vessel, three-dimensional space became two-dimensional. The ship and everyone inside it were flattened to paper-thin existence, aware but unable to move or scream. A third ship found its atoms rearranged. The metal hull became organic tissue. The crew became part of the ship itself, fused with it, feeling everything as their vessel died in the void. The Krillian fleet tried to fight back. They tried to retreat. They tried everything their 100 millennia of experience had taught them. Nothing worked. Their ships were toys in the hands of beings who understood reality at a level current science could not comprehend. 11 minutes after the battle began, it ended. 4,000 ships gone, destroyed or transformed into things that should not exist. The human fleet had not lost a single vessel. Not one had even been damaged. Admiral Cross's flagship moved through the debris field until it hung directly above Krillian Prime. 60 billion people lived on the planet's surface. They looked up at the massive ship that blocked their sun and waited for death. But the ship did not fire. Instead, Cross broadcast a message to every receiver on the planet. Her face appeared on every screen, in every home and public space. "You killed a child," she said. "You called it justice. You expected us to accept it and forget. You thought we were weak. You thought we had forgotten what we were." She paused. "We chose to forget. We chose to be peaceful. We chose to be kind. For 15,000 years we kept that promise. And you repaid our kindness with murder. On the surface, the Krillian High Elder stood in the capital city's central plaza. He had been on his command ship moments before. Now he was on the ground, transported there by technology he could not begin to understand. Around him, his people gathered in silence. Cross's voice continued. This is the one who ordered Tommy Chen's death. This is the one who called it lawful. This is the one who felt no guilt or shame or regret. The High Elder began to age. It happened slowly at first, then faster. Years fell onto him like stones. His crystalline body, which should have been ageless, began to fracture and dim. He lived through 100 years in seconds. 200, 500. Every moment of suffering that should have been spread across centuries hit him all at once. But he did not die. He could not die. The human technology would not allow it. He fell to his knees, ancient and broken and aware, and a holographic projector appeared before him. It showed Tommy Chen's final moments. The boy walking into the sacred chamber, reaching for a beautiful crystal, looking back with frightened eyes as the Krillians surrounded him. I am sorry. I did not mean any harm. Please, I want my mom. The recording played. Again, and again, and again. The High Elder could not look away. The technology would not let him. He was forced to watch Tommy's terror, to hear his apologies, to feel the boy's confusion and fear as if it were his own. He screamed. He begged for it to stop, but it did not stop. It would never stop. You will live with this, Cross said. For as long as your species exists, you will live with what you did. Every generation will know your name. Every child will learn your crime. You wanted to enforce your sacred laws. Now you will be the eternal example of what happens when ancient cruelty meets awakened justice. She turned her attention to the planet itself. As for the rest of you, you are not innocent. You supported this. You allowed it. You created the culture that made it possible. Every ship in the Silent Guardian fleet aimed its weapons at Krillian Prime. 60 billion people held their breath. We could destroy you, Cross said. We could turn your world to ash and move on to the next. We could do to you what you did to Tommy Chin magnified 1 billion times. Silence. But that is not who we chose to be 15,000 years ago. We decided that destruction alone was not enough. We wanted to be better. We wanted to prove that strength does not have to mean cruelty. She leaned forward. So we offer you a choice. Submit to our judgment. Accept the consequences. Help us build a galaxy where no child, human or alien, ever dies for innocent curiosity. Or refuse and watch everything you have built turn to dust. The transmission ended. Across Krillian Prime, billions of beings looked at each other. They looked at the fleet above them. They looked at their High Elder, broken and weeping, forced to watch a child's murder forever. One by one, they knelt. The Silent Guardian fleet remained above Krillian Prime for 3 days. During that time, Admiral Cross made her demands clear. The Krillian government would be restructured. Their sacred laws would be reviewed by a council that included humans. Any law that permitted harm to children would be abolished. Reparations would be paid to Sarah Chun. The Krillians agreed to everything. They had no choice. But more than that, many of them were horrified by what they saw in their High Elder's punishment. They had believed their laws were just. Now they understood the difference between law and justice. When the 3 days ended, Cross addressed the coalition again. This time, every species was watching. Every government had assembled to hear her words. We did not want to wake up, she said. We were happy sleeping. We were content being the peaceful species you knew. But you made a choice when you killed Tommy Chan. You showed us that this galaxy still values ancient pride over innocent life. She gestured to the fleet around her. The Silent Guardians are awake now. We will not sleep again. Not until we are certain that no species will harm children for violating rules they could not possibly understand. Not until we know that curiosity is celebrated rather than punished. Cross paused. Here are our terms. The Coalition will establish new protocols for protecting juvenile members of all species. Sacred sites must have clear warnings in multiple languages. Punishments for unintentional violations by children are forbidden. Any species that harms a child will answer to us. Furthermore, she continued, Earth is withdrawing from junior member status. Humanity will have equal representation and equal voice in all coalition decisions. Our technology, our knowledge, and our protection are available to species that demonstrate genuine commitment to these principles. And finally, Cross said, her voice hardening, Tommy-chan will be remembered. Every coalition station will have a memorial to him, and to all children who have been lost to cruelty disguised as law. His name will remind the galaxy what happens when the powerful forget to be kind. The transmission ended. The coalition had no choice but to accept. They had seen what the Silent Guardians could do. They had watched the Krillian fleet vanish like morning mist. They understood that humanity was not making requests. They were establishing the new reality. Within a month, the changes began. Memorials to Tommy-chan appeared on every major station. Warning systems were upgraded across the galaxy. The Coalition Charter was amended to include protections for children of all species. Sarah Chun was offered a position on the new Child Protection Council. She accepted. She would spend the rest of her life making sure no other parent experienced what she had endured. Admiral Cross remained awake, commanding the Silent Guardian fleet from a massive flagship that now orbited Earth. The ship became a symbol that could be seen from the planet's surface, a reminder of what humanity had been and what they had chosen to become. 1 year after Tommy's death, Sarah stood at his memorial on Earth. It was a beautiful place with gardens and fountains, and a statue of a young boy reaching toward the stars with wonder in his eyes. The inscription read, Tommy-chan, age 8, whose curiosity reminded the galaxy to be kind. Admiral Cross approached and stood beside her. They did not speak for a long time. Do you think you would have wanted this? Sarah finally asked. The war, the punishment, the changes. Cross considered the question carefully. He wanted to see the stars. He wanted to meet aliens and learn about the universe. He wanted the galaxy to be a place of wonder. She looked at the statue. We made sure it will be, for him, for every child who comes after him. That is what he would have wanted. Sarah nodded slowly. Tears ran down her face, but she smiled. Thank you for waking up. Thank you for making them remember. We are sorry we had to, Cross replied. But now that we are awake, we will make sure the galaxy never forgets. Never again will curiosity be punished with death. Never again will the powerful crush the innocent. This is our promise to Tommy. This is our promise to all children. Above them, the Silent Guardian fleet maintained its eternal watch. The sleeping giants had awakened, and they would never sleep again until the galaxy learned to protect its most precious gift, the wonder in a child's eyes.